Like love, justice, or beauty, forgiveness is one of those concepts that people find very difficult to understand and explain because it feels so different. And each of us experience it in very different levels. It feels as if there are very different situations, and the term seems to apply to all of them and yet feels so different in its meaning. It's one thing to forgive something that your boss told you at work, and a whole different thing to forgive a parent who has been abusive to you in childhood. And yet, we call both situations forgiveness. So, what is forgiving? And what's the meaning that is closest to your situation, to your relationships? And which meaning applies where? From a psychological point of view, forgiveness can be equated to a change in attitude. And if you think about it, no matter how big or how small the offense has been, no matter how difficult your hurt and your pain have been experienced in your life, it all comes up to that situation, to that moment in life when you decide to let go. It's easier to say, let go of the pain, let go of that, just let it go. It's another thing to actually do it. Because a change in attitude means that voluntarily you will stop ruminating over what happened, and you will decide that the person or the situation that hurt you will no longer be able to do that. And in order to do that, you will have to accept that you've been hurt, you've been vulnerable, and you were able to do nothing about it. And you'll also have to accept that all this has happened in the past. From that point on, forgiveness comes with a change in attitude. A change in attitude that results in a behavioral and a cognitive change. On a behavioral level, the person who decides to forgive stops any attempt to revenge, to equate the balance, and directs his or her entire energy towards something positive, towards growing, towards healing, towards building something new. On a cognitive level, the person who forgives tries to understand what happened and to integrate that into a different grieving story. We each tell each other, we tell ourselves and we tell to the others, a story about our pain, a story about our life. And that story alters every day because we're living it. We are telling it while living it. So forgiving results into a change of that story because we begin to think differently about the person who hurt us. We try to understand that person or the situation, and we try to detach from everything that happened in order to think about positive outcomes. The behavioral and the cognitive change result into a positive emotional change. And this all changes our story. You see that I have not mentioned anything about reconciliation, for example. Often we think about forgiveness as shaking hands and saying everything is forgiven, when in reality we say I am forgiving you, but I'm not forgetting what you've done to me. Forgiveness does not necessarily mean reconciliating. It should be beyond the imagination, beyond any reasonable expectation, to reconcile with an abuser and to place ourselves back into the situation that endangers our physical and psychological health. That's not the purpose of forgiving. Reconciliation may or can happen in many situations, especially during the day-to-day issues and problems and conflicts. Sometimes reconciliation is a main purpose of forgiving, especially when the relationship is very valuable to us and the harm is not that big. But on other occasions, forgiveness can occur without reconciliation and is even recommended to occur like that. Forgiveness is not justifying what happened. On the contrary, when we forgive, while trying to understand the other person, we state and we admit the injustice, the hurt, the pain, the entire situation that led to a very painful outcome. And also, forgiving does not take responsibility away from the wrongdoer. When we forgive something, it does not necessarily mean that the person who offended or hurt us or abused us is going to get away with it. On the contrary, genuine forgiveness puts into perspective a situation and helps the victim to take over, to get empowered, and to focus on rebuilding a life. Maybe on a day-to-day basis, forgiving feels very different. Maybe the things that we forgive today are subjectively very different from something that we'll have to forgive tomorrow. And maybe, just maybe, forgiveness is not the right term for everything that we encompass when we use the word. And yet, for the lack of a better word, forgiveness is a key ingredient for our psychological well-being. And this is why every time we are in the situation to forgive, to grant forgiveness, to mend fences, to heal, to start over, to admit hurt, to understand what happened, to detach ourselves from a situation that has trapped us and continues to hurt us, we will use the word to forgive. But in doing the deed, in offering forgiveness, in going forward, in looking forward to growing and building and healing, we forge a new meaning for the term every time. And this is why I am inviting you to come together, to open yourselves to the new meaning, to your personal meaning for the word to forgive.